Training camp officially kicks off this week for the Baltimore Ravens, and boy, do we need it because there is more drama as Marcus Williams completely blasted the Baltimore Ravens while taking a little bit of accountability too. We talk about that, Marlon Humphrey defending Lamar Jackson, and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here today on this Monday, new week, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. We're 5 days a week plus more here on Locked On Ravens. So Monday through Friday, you can catch us at 6 a.m. Eastern time, whether you want to watch in video form on YouTube or listen along in audio form. Really appreciate everybody for the support. We also have the Ravens Squad Show, which is a new component to the Locked On Ravens media empire here, which is Monday and Thursdays live on YouTube at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And if you can't catch it live, we have it available both for playback and video and audio form as well. Thanks so much to all the everydayers, first-time listeners, and if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We have made it. Maybe not officially yet, still one more day, but the veterans for the Ravens report to training camp tomorrow. The wait is almost over. We're finally going to be able to get into some training camp battles. Who's looking good at training camp? Who's not? And then before you know it, we're going to be talking about the preseason. And then before you know it, we're going to be talking about the regular season. So just keep trucking along. That's how we do things in the offseason when, we're just waiting for football to get back, and we are almost there. But we still have a jam-packed episode today because as the offseason goes, there's always some sort of offseason drama. The Ravens have been involved in, honestly, a decent amount this offseason. We've covered it all here, and we have new things to talk about today. Now, we will get into training camp battles a little bit in the final part of the show, so be sure to stay tuned for that because I have a couple of intriguing ones that I really want to dive into. The second part of the show, Marlon Humphrey, he defended Lamar Jackson, and he ended up really giving us inside information about who Lamar Jackson is and how he carries himself around the locker room and around the facility, which is really cool. But in the first part of the show, we have heard from Marcus Williams. Marcus Williams has broken his silence, and he blasted the Ravens and also, I guess, took a little bit of accountability in there. Well, not, I guess. He did take accountability. I do want to give Marcus the credit for doing that. But, man, he really wanted to let his voice be heard, and we heard it. We heard it. So we'll dive into what he had to say now. He went on Teron Armstead's podcast. Teron Armstead recently retired. He obviously was a great offensive lineman both for the Saints and the Dolphins, and him and Armstead played together in New Orleans. Obviously, Marcus Williams was in New Orleans for the first 5 years of his career before coming over to Baltimore there. Well, Marcus Williams spoke on the whole Ravens situation, benching, him not playing, that whole, ordeal that happened last year. And he blamed the Ravens for communication breakdowns. He said, quote, "To be frank, it was just a lot of miscommunication from the top down. I take accountability for whatever action that I did that they didn't like, but I didn't know what those actions were. But I take accountability for maybe missed opportunities, maybe missed plays, and I could have done better on. But as far as the communication from the top down, I feel like it could have been better." Williams then kind of talked a little bit more about that and went into a little bit more detail. He said, quote, "They could have communicated properly and effectively so that there were no miscommunications when the switch was going to occur. I mean, I played football for a long time. You don't just get bad overnight. Most people on the outside will believe the plays were given up on. They may have been on me, but they don't really know the depths of the coverage or what we were actually running, what we were told. They don't really know, but as a safety, my responsibility is to do whatever I can to show up in the television screen and maybe possibly make a play." Now, just to do a little bit of a refresher course on what happened to Marcus Williams before we dive a little bit more into what he had to say, and I'll react to those comments too. Williams really struggled last season. It was a severe drop off from what we saw from him in his first year as a Raven. He was benched against the Cleveland Browns in week 8. And then he ended up returning to the lineup against the Broncos in week 9. But then after he and the whole defense, it wasn't just Marcus Williams, but after that defense and Williams was included in this, they were awful against the Bengals in week 10. They somehow won that game. Williams played 2 defensive snaps over the rest of the season. We know they put in Darius Washington, they moved Kyle Hamilton's role around, and the rest is history. And just for a quick look at how much better the Ravens defense got once those changes were made is something we talked about pretty much after week 10 all the way through last year on the show here. I kept talking about how impressive it was. In the first 10 weeks of the season for the Ravens defense, they allowed 25.3 points per game, 367.9 yards per game, and 294.9 passing yards per game. Now, over the last 7 weeks of the season, those numbers they gave up just 15.4 points per game, 261.7 yards per game, and 171.5 passing yards per game. So essentially, they got 10 points better, about 100, actually more than 100 yards better per game, and about 120 passing yards better per game. That's how substantial it was. They finished 2024 also leading the league in rushing defense with 80.1 rushing yards allowed, but that was always good. There was no problem with the rushing defense. It was just everything else that was bad. And so, look, it wasn't all on Marcus Williams, and maybe there were miscommunications, right? Like, I'm not saying that he is completely false in what he's talking about, but I also, the accountability stuff from him here where he's saying, like, you don't just get bad overnight. I mean, sometimes you do. Like, that happens all the time, if we're being honest. I mean, you're going to tell a guy that has been a legend, like Odell Beckham Jr. went through a lot of injuries, right? He was one of the best receivers in the league. He is not the same player. He's not even in the league right now. A guy like Julio Jones, injuries happen. And for Marcus Williams, guess what? Injuries happen for him too. He started off really well in Baltimore and then, suffered the pec injury. He played through that. He was playing with one arm. Like, he toughed it out for Baltimore, but I don't know. Like, I don't really agree with the whole, like, you don't just get bad overnight. And, while, yeah, I guess, like, we're not in the meeting rooms to know what the intricacies of depths of the coverage were, like, there is a clear and like utter picture here of the defense improving with Marcus Williams on the bench. And it's also Eddie Jackson. It's also a couple of other guys, but I just feel like, what were those? If he was going to go all in on this miscommunication thing, like, okay, tell us what the miscommunications were. Like, if you're going to go at the franchise and blast the franchise, put them on blast here and take this stance, all right, well then what was it? Like, he doesn't even have to be like uber specific, but just like a little bit of detail of like, hey, in these meetings, they weren't telling me this, or, I wasn't getting told what I was doing wrong on the field in the moment. Like, it's just very vague to me here. And while he does take accountability in his answer, but, he also isn't going into detail about that. And to me, the big thing is like the proof is in the pudding, where there is just undeniable proof how much better the defense got. And, part of that is Darius Washington stepped up and was a better player than Marcus Williams. And another part of it is it's addition by subtraction. And that is clearly what happened. And I like Marcus Williams. Like, I do. I had him on the show a couple of years ago. Like, he was awesome. He seems like a genuine guy, but this to me is just like, I would be curious about the specific examples here. So I honestly wasn't expecting Marcus Williams to say silent forever, but it's interesting kind of the timing. And this, I guess, came out a little bit, it was last week, so we're reacting to it here on Monday. But I'm glad at least, and I will give Marcus credit for this, that he did handle it like a pro. Zach Orr talked about that last year. He absolutely handled the benching like a pro. Like, that's something I will give Marcus 100% credit for. He could have taken the Eddie Jackson route and just like thrown a tantrum and gotten cut and, not helped. He also helped the Ravens out from a salary cap perspective with the way that, his release and cut was orchestrated. So it helped. And I give Marcus a lot of credit for that. I don't think Marcus is a bad guy or anything, but I just think the comments in itself, I'm curious because it did seem like there was more drama behind the Ravens this year. But at the same time, if you're not playing well, you're not playing well. Like, it is what it is. And sometimes, maybe you didn't know or understand what was going on, but clearly it was getting communicated in the back half of the season when the Ravens turned it around. And the difference was that Marcus was not on the field. So that's kind of the situation on that. And coming up, we'll continue talking about what Marcus Williams had to say. So stay tuned. A lot coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel's the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. And I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm a part of the action. And yes, since this is Locked On Ravens, I am an Orioles fan, and I know it has been rough for the Orioles this season. Their World Series odds over on FanDuel plus 55,000. So maybe you're feeling spicy about the Orioles. You can get in on that action over on FanDuel. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5, get 150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. And the show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This is an ad by BetterHelp. Workplace stress is at an all-time high. 61% of the global workforce is reporting higher than normal stress levels. This summer is the perfect time to take small steps to focus on your wellness and manage the challenges that come with your workday. Of course, most of us can't just quit our jobs or take endless vacations, but we can start small, whether it's getting outside for a few minutes, adding movement into your day, or talking to someone who can help you navigate life's challenges. That's where BetterHelp comes in. And sometimes you have a busy schedule and you might not feel like you have enough time to schedule appointments, or maybe you wish you had more time to schedule appointments. The flexibility of online therapy makes it easy to fit sessions into a busy schedule no matter where you are. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Monday again. Veterans report to training camp tomorrow. Extremely exciting. I can't wait to dive into all the news. It's going to be a daily news cycle here. We're going to have it all covered on Locked On Ravens. Be sure you tell a friend, tell a family member if they want daily Ravens coverage. We have them covered, just like we have you covered over here on Locked On Ravens. Let's continue our Marcus Williams conversation. Then we'll move into Marlon Humphrey defending Lamar Jackson. Marcus Williams also talked about how, somebody had to take the fall. He said, quote, ultimately, somebody had to take the fall because the media is looking at it, the fans are looking at it, and somebody has to take the fall for what's going on. And even though it may not be my fault, I'm not going to come out and say, hey, this is such and such person. I give Marcus Williams a lot of credit for not being that guy last season, not coming out and going on this rant about the Ravens. And if he did, he honestly probably would have been cut. But actually, I don't even know. The Ravens honestly could. They were in a rock. They were stuck between a rock and a hard place with Marcus Williams because his contract and the way it was a big contract. So I don't even know what they would have done in that situation. And Williams also said he still loves football, has been ready to contribute since midseason last year. You see, he has a lot of confidence, and he said he believes that he is, if not the best safety in the league, I'm one of the best, and there's a lot of great safeties out there. So, confidence is something that Marcus is not short on. And you know what? You should have confidence if you're a professional athlete. So good for him on that. Do I agree with what he's saying? No. But I do think that I wonder a lot about, if it would have been different if Marcus didn't get injured last season early on, like 2 years ago early on. And even in his first season with the Ravens, when he was absolutely balling out and he got injured in the first couple games of that year, he came back, but it was all, it was a rough go of it for Marcus in Baltimore, and I think the potential was clearly there for him because he was awesome, and he signed a 5-year, $70 million deal. It looked like he was living up to that early, but then again, it was just injuries for him, and this was a guy that did not miss a lot of games in New Orleans. Again, he played 5 years with the Saints and barely missed any time, and then in Baltimore, he, I know last year was more so the benching and stuff, but even still, first season in Baltimore, he misses 7 games. Then the season after that, he misses 6 games. And they brought him in to be a ball hawk. He did that. 2022, he tied his career high in interceptions with 4, and he showed that ability. And that was all really at the beginning of the year. Like, he was on pace to have a great year in 2022. I think a lot of people, myself included, were excited about that. And I'm just like, man, they've been looking for that back end safety for a while now. This guy is it. But it ended up, not coming to fruition. And I do wonder what it would have been like if Marcus didn't get injured and had the torn pec situation 2 years ago or, 3 years ago with, him getting injured and having to work his way back. Like, it was a tough go for Marcus, but, he said, quote, "There's one thing that I do, and it is care, and I'm overly competitive. I'm about my business. I do everything the right way. So to do stuff the right way, to treat people the right way, to practice the right way, to watch film, to do everything the right way, it hurts when there's a lack of communication. And that's what I was most hurt about. I could have done with, hey, you know what? You've been doing this wrong. And then sitting me opposed to, hey, you're done, right?" Again, it was a messy season for the Ravens last year, in a bunch of different ways. It was honestly pretty unlike the Ravens to have that much drama going on. And he said, quote, "If I come out and start bashing my teammates, bashing my friends, and I'm a cancer in the locker room, and I don't want to be that type of guy. So I just keep it on the hush. I'm not a flashy person. I'm not a big talker. But when I'm probably done with football, I'm going to be the one saying, like, this is what happened. This is how it happened. And I'm just going to keep it real because no one really knows what's really going on in the locker room besides the people in the locker room unless that person says it. And once you do that, you're a cancer to the team." So maybe we will get the clarity once Marcus Williams retires. He will literally go and single out everybody. I'm not sure. He said he was still appreciative of the Ravens and their support over his 3 years. He said he appreciates all the fans, the coaches, appreciate them giving me the opportunity, and, went on that rant as well about, not a rant, but, on a spiel about the Ravens there. He said, quote, "I feel like I played through injuries over there. I went through a torn pec, dislocated my wrist, and I still played. I still had great plays." And, he said he put it all on the line for the Ravens. I don't disagree with him about that. I do think that he played through injuries he probably shouldn't have been playing through, and I give him credit for that. But the expectations that come with a 5-year, $70 million contract, if you're not living up to that and you're healthy, and again, it's disappointing when a guy gets injured. Like, it's tough, but I don't blame players for injuries. That's not my style, personally. But I understand that it's still disappointing, as I was disappointed in that. But then when you're not contributing when you're healthy and the Ravens are looking for every reason to, okay, can we work on this? Can we work on that? And maybe they weren't, I don't know what the communication was like, but when they finally just say, hey, we really have to change this, it's really not working. And there's proof. Again, the big thing to me is there was proof of it not working. Like, there were plays where Marcus was turned around. He got he got mossed by Bo Nix. Bo Nix is a quarterback. They ran a trick play, and Bo Nix went up there and caught a ball against Marcus Williams, like just mossed him. It can't have that happen. Like, he's lost on plays, and who's to say that the miscommunication also wasn't on Marcus here? Like, again, he took accountability for like the lack of plays that the plays that he missed and that the whole 9 there. But was it just that like Marcus wasn't understanding? And I see some people have talked about the situation and said maybe he'll do better in a system that doesn't ask as much of their safeties. And, the Ravens do ask a lot of all their positions on that defense, but safety is one where if you're playing safety, you're going to get asked to do a lot. Like Kyle Hamilton has a whole set of roles. They weren't even asking him to do all that. Kyle is, there's a lot on his plate, but the role that the safeties play in the Ravens defense is massive. Malaki Starks will have that burden this year. So, it was unfortunate to see it end the way that it ended. I had a lot of high hopes for Marcus, especially after the start that he had in Baltimore, but it was injuries, it was poor play. And, I don't blame the Ravens for making the decision they made even if you want to just go off of the eye test, like Marcus was involved, just like Brandon Stevens was, and just like Eddie Jackson was, in a lot of those poor plays. And while, Stevens didn't get benched or anything, and, but not at least to the extent that Marcus was. It was time. It was time. So, just the situation I didn't really expect. So I didn't expect this. I maybe expected to come out like a couple years later, maybe like Marcus said when he was done with football. But, he wanted to say his piece. He and Teron Armstead are good friends. So that was the platform, and he did it there. So we'll talk about Marlon Humphrey defending Lamar Jackson in the final part of the show. Plus, we'll do training camp battles that I'm looking forward to as well. So stay tuned. We got a lot coming your way on the show. First, this show is brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. You can even read real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. So head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL and use promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Monday, rocking out with you on the show. Appreciate everybody again for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day. The support on the show has been absolutely incredible. I'm coming up on my 6-year anniversary of hosting this show. This is season 7 covering the Ravens for me here on Locked On Ravens. So it's been awesome to see the show continue to grow and flourish, and it's not possible without all the support. So obviously starting off in audio form, adding video form a couple years later, on social media, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, it's been absolutely incredible. So thank you. And again, if you're new to the channel, welcome in. Hopefully you can stay along for the ride. If you're an everyday, you've been with me for a long time, appreciate your continued support. And if you're somewhere in the middle, again, thank you as well. And we're coming up now on 14,000. We just hit 13,000 subscribers in video form. Our audio, product continues to flourish, and that community grows every single day as well. So my goal here for video form, I'm going to make one for audio form a little later, but for video form, it's 14,000 subscribers by the time the season starts. We're about 800 away from that. So that'd be awesome if we can get to that goal. But let's talk a little bit about Marlon Humphrey and the defense that he put up for Lamar Jackson. He talked to Kevin Clark on the This Is Football podcast or show, which, Kevin Clark does a great job and really gets the best out of the people he's talking to. He's that talented at what he does. I really enjoy listening to his work and, hearing the stories that the people on his show tell. Now, Marlon Humphrey was asked about a lot of different things, and he talked about the fact that he wants to go into media after his football career, which should be a surprise to no one. Marlon, that we've known that for a while about Marlon Humphrey. He's been vocal about it. It shouldn't be a shock to anybody here. But Marlon said he's not really bothered by the media hating because it's their job, like he understands it. But he did say the only thing that bothers him, he said, one, is when he sees things that are very, very, very not true about certain things. And then he said, two, really about Lamar. Things that really don't bother me, but there's really so many things that just aren't true about Lamar. The takes, why this happened, why that happened. It's more so I've always felt it isn't equal across the board. There's 31 quarterbacks that did not win the Super Bowl, but there's really only one or two that get blamed for X, Y, and Z, and I feel like Lamar is always in that category. It is what it is. It's kind of the take right now, the most popular take right now. Man, I'll tell you, Marlon Humphrey right now, he's spitting facts. A couple of different things. First of all, there are 31 other quarterbacks that didn't win the Super Bowl. And yes, with Lamar Jackson, how good he is, there will be higher expectations than a quarterback that's not as good as him. But even the quarterbacks that are in the same conversation, maybe not better than Lamar, but even in the same conversation, feels like those quarterbacks are not criticized the way Lamar Jackson is. And it is kind of the popular thing to do, right? Oh, you want to talk about the popular thing? Oh, talk about Lamar Jackson. Talk about, his failures. And no, that's the popular thing. Everybody's going to talk about it. I mean, it's ridiculous in my opinion. I'm all for talking about a player's strengths and weaknesses and what they're good at and what they're not, and where they've been great and where they need to improve. But it just feels like the more criticism gets piled on like daily. It just is what it is. And then Kevin Clark asked him, is there anything specific you'd like to clear up about Lamar? And Marlon said, quote, anything involving Lamar's lack of leadership would be one. The dude's humility is crazy. I think he makes everybody around him better just because he acts like he's on the roster bubble for some reason. I remember when I first came in, I sat down at the lunch table and Joe Flacco just sat down next to me. I remember just being like, I wouldn't think a quarterback would do that. Why would he sit next to this rookie dude? That's one of my first memories being in the building. I think about rookies coming in now with Lamar, the way he acts, it makes you just relax. It comes from the head in Baltimore, the ownership, the GM, the head coach. It all trickles down from the family perspective, the humility perspective. I think it's so funny because this is not the first time that I've heard this about Lamar, is that he does not act, at least around his teammates and the organization, like he is the star. Like, he's not getting that diva treatment, it feels like. He truly is like one of the guys. Like that's what I think Marlon is trying to say here. And again, it's not the first time I've heard that. So the fact that, he is like that, I think he hits the nail on the head here. It does relax you. Like, when there's somebody that feels like a larger than life figure and, that person just acts like another person, it makes things just feel less tense, I guess, is a way, whether it's someone who's in a higher up position than you or, whatever you can relate it back to in life, it feels like Lamar really tries to put himself on an equal playing field, which I think is really cool of him. And really cool tidbit in here, though, from Marlon about that Joe Flacco rookie story and him kind of mentioning the fact that, this is an organizational thing. And most people who play in Baltimore enjoy it. It's not everybody, right? I mean, we know that. But for the most part, you hear about stories like this. And the fact that it really, the players who they bring into the building, for the most part embody those qualities. So, really cool from Marlon to kind of go to bat for Lamar here and make it known, about his leadership, because we've seen stuff about his leadership recently, people coming at him and talking about what he said on the Kevin Hart thing he went on the interview. And, he didn't mean that. No, Lamar is a good leader. He's grown in that aspect, and, good for Marlon for sticking up for Lamar. But training camp, it does begin, at least the vets report tomorrow. We'll talk a lot more about battles, players to watch, guys on the hot seat in terms of their roster spots, but I do want to get into a couple of those here before we head out of here. The one I'm looking at, the big one I think is the guard position, but I don't think that is as big of a competition as some people think. I'm not sold on Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees starting. I get it. I still think that they should consider bringing in a vet like Brandon Sheriff, but feels like they are going to roll with Falele and Voorhees. I think the battle to me is Trenton Simpson versus Teddy Buchanan. Like, I feel like that spot is kind of wide open. John Harbaugh and the Ravens didn't necessarily have glowing remarks on Trenton Simpson early in the offseason process. Now, Zach Orr and, some of the defensive guys had good comments on him. So maybe, that perspective has shifted. But I do think it truly is a battle for that second inside linebacker spot next to Roquan Smith. So we'll see there. I think another big one is that third safety spot. Is it going to be Bo Braid, Sanusi Kane? Does Jalen Lambert Davis continue to get reps at safety? We'll kind of see. Cornerback, there are a lot of bodies, especially with Jaire Alexander signed. I'm excited to see him in uniform. So, there are so many storylines here for the Ravens. And, again, it's not like there are a bunch of roster spots up for grabs or even starting spots up for grabs, but there are battles here and there for really important roles on the team, which, you can start. It starts with your stars. It does, but it trickles all the way down, kind of like what Marlon Humphrey said there. It trickles all the way down to the 53rd man on the roster, to the practice squad. So, this is a time for these guys to make names for themselves, for opportunities, and we'll have you covered with all that on Locked On Ravens. So that's all I have for you today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show. On the way out, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. And be sure you catch the Locked On Ravens squad show tonight at 7:30. It's myself, Sam Njoku, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail chopping it up for an hour live. And again, if you can't catch it live, we do have it available after the fact in both video form and audio form. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.